Buonanno, auguri, abbiamo tornati. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory. It's 2025 and we are back. I'm joined by my very good friends, Adam and Andrea. Guys, it feels like forever. I'm going to start with Andrea. How are you, man? How was your Christmas? Good New Year? Buonanno.
Buonanno, yeah, good. Good you started off the new year with the right Italian words.
Mate, I've been
Start the
practicing. I've
year.
been running it through my head, honestly.
I was waiting for it, but yep, spot on. Yeah, no, all good. A bit of an emotional day, obviously, today, where it's like officially you take the Christmas stuff down. We did get the late night, we get the snow as well, which was pretty good as well for like about half a day. But apart from that, yeah, the rest was good.
Yeah, nice. We've just had the Bafana visit today, right? So I gave the girlfriend some chocolates, and we took down the Christmas tree. It is quite emotional, but all in all, it's been pretty good. Adam, how was your festive period?
Very good, thank you. Buonanno, wszystkiego najlepszego w nowego roku. Happy New Year to everyone, right? Yeah, it's quite relaxing. I did come down, unfortunately, with the cold epidemic that seems to be sweeping the nation. So it's from Boxing Day onwards, but it wasn't as rough as some of the other people that I know had that cold. And I suppose no panettone for me, but I did get a mocha pot. So I am trying my best to be a connoisseur of coffee now. So I am trying my best. I might need some tips from you guys as to what the right blend to get in right now. I've just gone for a Tesco original for the time being, an Italian blend, which seems to be okay, but maybe not to the stars. So I'm sure I'm getting some disapproving looks and nods at the moment as we speak.
We will talk about it. I just don't want to promote. I just don't want to promote the product until they're sponsoring us. But we'll talk about it off mic about which ones you can get. But honestly, my day every day starts with a mocha pot. I absolutely love it. Oh, that's a great present. I absolutely love that.
That's very good.
But while we were up resting our feet, Serie A and more importantly, the chairman definitely were not. And there's been a few heads have rolled across the Christmas period. Let's start with the one that caught all the headlines. I think none of us were surprised, especially not Fonseca. He was talking about it before the game, during the game, and very quickly after the game, as he was dismissed of his duties. It felt like it was kind of done at half-time, but announced at full-time. Adam, we've been talking about it for weeks, if not months, about when this was going to happen. So it's not surprising at all, but...
No.
Do you think overall it was about time? There was no way it was going to get any better. Is it just a shame it took them this long?
I think it was odd in terms of the timing. I think what was the overriding thought, and I think when we've got that time of reflection, is how badly the board dealt with the scenario and the situation. In particular, the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which was a figurehead for this whole kind of debacle alongside Jerry Cardinale. Obviously, it's very clear that the Zlatan wasn't included in terms of the conversations with regards to his departure as well. And I think it just looks really unprofessional for a club of the size of Milan. The way they handle it, the way they kind of let Fonseca actually announce that he was leaving, and it wasn't from his own doing, it was through the fact that they sacked him. So it was really badly handled. What I will give credit, or slight credit, should I say, is the personality they brought in Sergio Conceição. I think he is definitely a massive upgrade on what was talked about as a potential candidate, and I think what still seems a bit amateurish is the fact that has been talk of them offering it to Maurizio Sarri, but on a 6-month trial basis before offering him a permanent contract, which seems really off. So yeah, I still think there's a feeling that they're only in it for the money. They're trying to cover their own backs in that sense. But from purely footballing perspective, I think this is the right kind of man with the right aptitude and maybe the right ideas to advance Milan. And I think he's a kind of person that will want hard work, determination from his players, and he will get them more rounded. I think he will develop this squad even further than they could have been under Fonseca. That said, obviously, I think those kind of prickly, personalities that didn't see eye to eye with Fonseca will see it a lot more drastic with Conceição. He's a person that doesn't kind of accept, people not working hard. And it'll be very fascinating to see how those kind of conversations happen now, and whether we start seeing those kind of leaks happen going forward, because we had a lot under Fonseca. I suspect that will be a lot more reserved now going forward, Rory. I mean, from your point of view, do you think that was a great appointment, or do you think they should have maybe bided their time and see what else there was?
Well, look, I think the thing I've kind of on this pod talked about the fact that I thought they should have just given him the end of the season and seen if they can kind of turn it around. The season's kind of gone now, and they're not really going to qualify for Europe no matter how good Conceição is. But I think from what I've read over here, the only reason they sacked him now is because they would only have to pay him 1 year's compensation if it was within 6 months, as opposed to if it was longer than 6 months, they would have to pay out the whole of his contract. So I think even in this decision, they've kind of done the coward's way of it, of being like, okay, we have to do it now, otherwise we have to pay, rather than actually sticking to their convictions and making a decision. It's again the fight, like the bank sheet that's made the decision for them, not them or the footballing idea or the strategy. Is kind of, okay, how can we save money? So I think even in this decision making, even though the fans might be happy it's been made, the reason the decision's been made isn't particularly fantastic. I think Conceição, now I don't particularly like the bloke. Every time Arsenal have played him, he's been a moany twat and a pain in the arse. But I think if there's a bloke who's going to have an ego as big as Zlatan, it might be Conceição. So I think it might actually be someone who's going to stand up to Zlatan and be like, no, and like demand things from him. Whereas I think the impression I get is that the Cardinales and the board at Milan look at Zlatan as like, oh, thank God he's here. He's this genius who has like honoured us with his presence of this role. And that's not what it is. They need someone, someone has to demand something from him and be like, this is what you need to do. This is what I need you to do. And I think maybe Conceição could be the guy to do that because he is this big personality, right? And his record in Portugal is very good. Andrea, I don't know what you think. I'm going to go to you, but I really like the fact that when he came in, he just said, we're going to play basic football. It's not this overarching, complicated idea. For now, we just need to get the basics right. We need to make sure we're doing everything properly, and then we can go from there. Like, is it a good thing that he's got the rest of this season to figure it out now, find out what squad he's got, and keep it simple? Like, we saw the improved, like, getting the result against Juventus, slightly fortuitous in the goals, but he still managed to overturn a lead and instill those basics quite quickly, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of managers try to be eager and try to overpromise things straight away. So I do appreciate the fact that he recognises that there is a lot of issues going on in Milan. I mean, he knows it, and I'm pretty sure he feels above Milan, above the players as well, that there's issues as well. I think, like Adam was saying before, like the unprofessionalism as well that happened with the Fonseca sacking is also going to still loom a bit over the club. So he's going to want to try and get away from that as well, in that respect as well. But what I think he'll do as well is I think he'll start getting the best out of certain players that wasn't doing well. Like, for example, Theo Hernandez is one. I mean, just out at Porto, he was really known for his fullbacks, back then as well. So I think he'll get a lot out of him. I think he even scored today already in the Super Cup. So, which is, did he score?
In the 93rd minute, Milan have just got a winner. It's 3-2 to Milan to come back from 2-0 down. I think it is Abraham who's got the goal. All the Milan players are looking very, very pissed off. Fratesi looks like he wants to die. Just need to wait and see what happens with that goal. But live reaction, Andre, this could be a huge moment for Conceição, right?
Yeah, as I was about to say, they were going to score the winner because Theo Hernandez was, playing. He's going to get the best. I just think he's going to get the best out of those type of players. Leao was being consistent, not being dropped a lot, trying to get him back on side and with a hunger to, do well for the club because on his day, he's one of the best in Serie A, hands down. So I just think that that's absolutely right. There's so much basics that Milan haven't got right at the moment. So the key is to get those players back in the squad, back in for the hunger of the team and, fighting for the team, and everything else should hopefully click. But the good thing is, like you said, he's got half the season to kind of figure it out. And then maybe in the summer start looking at certain areas where he'll want to improve. But there's still a good core there that they can build around. It's just getting those players that extra minutes first before looking into the summer.
Well, this could be an incredible start for Conceição. I think this could really be a springboard for him. Obviously, Milan beat Inter earlier in the season as well. Adam, if he wins this, how big a springboard could this be for Milan's season? Now, I know I've already said they're not going to qualify for Europe, right? I think the gap is too big, but it'll just improve the mood, and the owners will be very happy. There'll be a lot less noise aimed towards them, I imagine.
Yeah, certainly. I think from a purely footballing sense, it will give them a bit more pride. Certainly, there's not been a lot to kind of shout about for Milan's season. So, given this could be the second time that they've beaten Inter in a tournament now, this is going to be a really major factor for them going forward. And I think this could be the springboard that they wanted. So, this is definitely the immediate impact that they probably were hoping for. And now it's all about how do you build on that. And I suspect he might get an opportunity now with the extra funds that you achieve from winning this actual Super Coppa now, to reinvest into the squad. Let's see what happens. But certainly I feel with Contessao, he will get a lot more out of these players than Fonseca. So yeah, definitely a lot of hopes for next season.
It's exciting times. When it was feeling all a bit grim at Milan, I think the owners might have stumbled across a solution, but we'll see how the next 30 seconds plays out. It was some terrible defending from Inter as well. But let's go to the next managerial change that maybe makes a little less sense. Now, obviously, Monza has sacked Nesta. It was obvious it was going to happen. Again, needed to happen. Monza are looking beyond rescue. We're going to get into that later in the show a bit more. But they have chosen to replace Nesta with the assistant manager from Verona. He's only ever managed 7 games in Serie A. I think it was 6. Now he's on 8, I think. But he was interim at Verona for a while, didn't win a single game, and still hasn't won a single game at Monza. It's Bocchetti. Andrea, when you are looking for someone to come and rescue you and you're in a dire situation, why do you think the owners have turned to someone who has never managed a senior team before? Like, this seems like such a huge gamble.
I have no logic into why they chose Borghetti. I'm not going to lie. There's not really the only thing I can think of is that it's just the Italian image, the young up and coming manager like they did with Nesta, maybe have that somehow click. But it's so risky. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. When you take those type of risks, it can backfire. They really needed someone experienced to come in and try and fix it, or even someone just has been there and kind of been around those situations. So I'm quite surprised with the appointment, especially the fact that he hasn't won a game, which is that's already a big concern as it is, and he's already lost 2 in a row now, and they've got some hard fixtures coming up as well. I was just questioned why they didn't look at, if they wanted to keep this Italian mold. I wonder why they didn't look at someone like perhaps Gilardino, who was recently got sacked. I know he's not may not be the safest either, but at least he's someone that had the hunger to fight with Monza, knows what it is to be in the trenches, and maybe he could have, and plays good football as well. And they've got some players there that can play some good football. So yeah, I'm a bit surprised with the appointment, and I just don't see where it improves. In the first 2 games, you normally see a manager bounce. We always talk about that. I haven't seen any improvement. It just seems like Nesta's still in charge. That's how it feels at the moment. So yeah, it's very concerning, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and it's something for me, like, Monza have been a club that have been incredibly well run since they were taken over, right? They were kind of this project of getting them. It took them a while to get into Serie A, but they built sensibly and then got them into Serie A and kind of built this squad sensibly, quite self-sustainably. I don't think they're really, like, in much debt and stuff. Like, Adam, it's quite surprising that when their owners are people that have been in the game for so long that they have taken this risk, right?
Slightly, I think they were, and I think the way that I interpret this is that they probably thought that they could gamble on someone and do a Palladino again. Someone that was a bit of an unknown, maybe had a coaching philosophy that they agreed with in principle and thought that they could get the best out of it. But as Andrea alluded to, we haven't seen that kind of direct impact on the squad. The squad is probably playing worse than they did under Nesta to many respects. I think I feel sorry for Nesta because I don't think necessarily he got the full backing when it came to the transfer business. So I think he was let down in that respect, which is why I think prior to us kind of finishing last year, we all speculated that he would get the opportunity to bring his own people in and potentially turn this season around. And that's what the kind of signs seem to indicate. But when they did manage to kind of pull the trigger and relieve Nesta of his duties, I thought they need to get someone that has got that experience. And I think they really did try to go down the cheap option, I'm afraid to say, and it's going to massively backfire for them. I think inevitably it feels like this could be another sacking in the coming few weeks if results don't improve. And by that point, the next manager, he's probably got maybe 2 weeks left of the window to play around with, and that's going to be a hell of a task. So it's going to rely on someone who knows maybe a good network of agents and maybe coaches to kind of ring around and see who's available. I think Monza just lack that bit of quality. We've talked about up front that they're not scoring enough goals, but also defensively they're really poor. And when there's rumours of Pablo Mari potentially leaving for Fiorentina as well at the same time, that's probably one player that I'd say only has the best of the bunch of in terms of experience and maybe a good grapple in terms of defensive line. And I think even if you look at the kind of midfield area, Maldini potentially might get sold off in this window. So all signs kind of point to Monza potentially being relegated, and it could be a really bad season because I think that last year they only had 2 wins all season at Monza, and this season it seems like the trend is continuing that they're not going to record a victory in Monza. So bad times for Monza, badly managed. I think they cheaped out and unfortunately paying the consequences now.
Yeah, it's not looking good. Well, I was watching them against Cagliari again. We're going to get into it in the second part of the show. It was not fun to watch. And it's weird because their first year in Serie A, Monza was a really, really difficult place to go to. Like, they were beating a lot of big teams there. So, yeah, they've really not been able to keep that level up. But, guys, they're the kind of headlines since we've been gone. Now we're back. We're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back from that break, we're going to talk about all the action in Serie A this weekend. We'll see you on the other side. And we are back, and it is official, guys. AC Milan 3, Inter 2. From 2-0 down, Milan have rescued it. This now means that Conceição might have the best introduction of any manager in history. 2 games, and he's beaten Juve and Inter, both from coming from behind to get these wins. If nothing else, he's shown that he's instilled a spirit into these players that they're willing to fight, that they definitely did not have under Fonseca. Andrea, you were saying in the first part of the show he's going to get the best out of Fernandez. He's got a goal and an assist this evening. Leao with an assist for Abraham to get the winner. We kind of briefly talked about it, but is this a statement from Conceição and Milan now that this season isn't finished and they can match up with the big boys?
It has to be, hasn't it? It's got to be a catalyst to build from. I still think that there's still a lot of question marks to answer, though. So I don't think it will get easier, per se. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's certainly going to give them such a boost. Hopefully the manager can work with the players, showing them that, we can actually win and beat big teams and, do well. So that's the main thing, the impression he gives initially. So hopefully the players will build into it and, see from there. But I still think there's a lot of things to do, a lot of questions to be answered. And the consistency as well, which is going to be key this season, if they're going to even challenge for that 4th spot, which is still looks quite far off at the moment.
No, absolutely. And it's kind of easy-ish to do it against the big boys, but in the games where you're expected to win, can you be professional and get the job done is the kind of question, I suppose. But Adam, for Inter, this is a bit of a concern now. They were so close to beating Milan 6 times in a row, the first team to do it in the derby. They've now lost 2 in a row. And it's not often we see Inter give away 2-goal leads. Some really naive defending, a bit of complacency. Or was it the fact that Hakan Çalhanoğlu went off injured in the first half and that kind of limited them from there?
I think, as you allude to in your last point, Hakan has a huge kind of real influence on that squad. They do seem to struggle as soon as he goes off injured, and we saw that earlier in the season when he was injured as well. I think they are struggling to find someone that has that same impact in terms of a type of player that can dictate and be almost like a regista. And whilst they have got players like Zielinski, for example, brought in this season, who we thought would elevate this squad, for example, I think Simeone Inzaghi is still struggling with the balance. I think he is still struggling with trying to get the core players on board and play the style that he wants to. It seems to be a consistency piece as well, because we've seen prior to this game, Lautaro having a terrible touch in front of goal. In the semi-finals, he had abundance of chances and we were wondering, does he need a rest? There's a lot of rumours on, socials about his weight, because there's a recent photo comparison of him from last season, and that was blown out of proportion. But obviously, maybe he's had a lot of careers barbecues. I don't know, but legitimately, it's not just him, is it? It's also Marcus Thuram. He goes hot and cold, so to speak, and I do think that they are waiting for a few players to be potentially moved off, maybe bring in some fresh blood. I think Inzaghi's probably like at that point where he's exhausted what he can do with these players, because either they're not playing consistently or they just need to bleed in some new players into that squad. And I think that's where we are. I've said for a while, though, I feel defensively, that's the area where they need to reinvigorate and get some younger players into that squad, because unfortunately, Acerbi, as much as he is a class above some of those defenders right now, he's not getting any younger. So they do need to kind of look and address those aspects, and possibly, and I haven't seen the goals yet, but based on the commentary that we've seen and heard, it feels like that they are just slipping at the last minute of games now. They are conceding, and these are the things that Inzaghi wouldn't have let in that kind of unbeaten run that he had last season. So I think there's elements of this, Rory, where I feel they could improve on. I mean, from your point of view, where do you think it's going wrong for Inzaghi?
Well, look, I think they've been on an incredible run in the league. They've been absolutely battering teams. Like, I think this is very much a kind of one-off result as well. But I think what it shows with this team is that at times when the pace picks up, when the temperature turns up a bit, there's not the characters in that squad to kind of stand up and be counted and get the result over the line. There were some odd decisions he brought off Barella this evening as well, which I think is quite a brave decision. But like, I feel, with this Inter team at times, when it just gets a bit tense, they tend to melt a little bit, and I think that's what's happened here. I don't think it needs a roots and branch reform, obviously, but I think the defence is very much an area that needs looking at. There was a defender they were linked with today that they're very close to signing from the German league. I want to say, I've forgotten his name now, but they are very close to bringing in another centre-back. I think Bissek is rumoured to be leaving. I think his time in the club might be done. But yeah, they're obviously very much looking at reinforcing that back line, because we said throughout the season, you can't really predict who's going to start in defence for them. It's been quite chop and change. So I think they're trying to figure out to get a bit of stability there. But they're still like massively favourites for the league, and they've only conceded 15 goals all season. Like, they're going to be okay, but I think it's a little bit of a freak result here, and something that Inzaghi will have to look at. For a manager who has had such a good record in the big games over the past as well, it's something that he'll need to look at, how his management of games is affecting this. But huge win for Milan. Delighted for them. Hopefully it's a big springboard for them for the rest of their season. Incredible start for Conceição. I feel like we're going to be talking about him a lot this season, because there's going to be a lot of headlines around him, I imagine, and Milan. But let's leave that one there. The first trophy this season, guys, is given out. Auguri Milan, they won the Supercoppa. Good work. Let's focus our attention back to Serie A, and let's talk about maybe a bigger win. No, not quite a bigger win, but a huge win. Maybe a more surprising win, as Roma beat Lazio 2-0. Ranieri going back to his boyhood club and delivering one more derby win. You could not write it. And of course, who delivered the first goal? But the man who's been chewed out in the papers the entire season, especially this week, including kind of by his own manager, with the comments this week of Ranieri saying, I don't know if I can start him. I don't know if psychologically it's the best thing for him. Apparently he had a meeting with him this week where Pellegrini came in and begged him and insisted on, I want to captain Roma one more time in the derby. And Ranieri decided to do it. Now, Pellegrini's been linked with moves to Arsenal. He's been linked with moves all over the shop at the moment. But Andrea, how big a moment is that for him to step up and such an incredibly calm and skillful, well-taken goal? It really felt like such a statement and grabbing that game by the scruff of the neck, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the fans would have gone into that game worried that they might have got a convincing loss. So, especially the fact that I think that's a lot of Italian players, that's the way they do it. They get a lot of criticism. They find a way to kind of silence it. And I think that's only going to boost his, obviously, performance and confidence as well. And I just think it needed someone like him to step up, because he's been there for such a long time. Like, Roman born, like he knows Roma inside and out. So, and the fans want him, deep down, they'd want him to lead and do well. So it's great to see. It was a great team goal, and it was a great finish as well. but I feel like him and others in that midfield really led that game, especially in that first half.
Mm-hmm.
A clear difference. Perhaps a Ranieri masterclass. I'm not too sure on it, but I think it's just at the end of the day, it's just one of those where he said he begged for it, he begged to play. The desire is there, and when the desire is there, magic can happen. So it was great to see. We've missed seeing him do well in Serie A because he's been quite under the shadow for. I feel like for the last 2 seasons, to be honest, not even like.
Yeah.
So and he is on his day a top midfielder. So it's good to see. Just hopefully, maybe that might get him more game time, and we'll start seeing him performing a bit more. And he also had that obviously with Italy as well. He had that red card, so he's had some downs in both international and club level. So hopefully that's a positive start to the new year.
No, absolutely. And I want to kind of stress that Ranieri never doubted his quality. He said he's one of the best technical midfielders in Europe. Like, he just said, I'm not sure if mentally all of this criticism is a bit too much for him. Because it has been intense, and we know that Roma is like an intense place to play football. And when you say, as you said, like Roman born, Roman bred was supposed to take over from Totti and De Rossi, big boots to fill, and it's just kind of waned a little bit this season. But hopefully this is it. Well, it is a huge moment for him. Hopefully it can kickstart a season, like you said. But Adam, for Roma, they were just so relentless at the beginning of this game. What I was really impressed with the most was just the absolute pace that they ran at Lazio and did not let them settle. It felt like if Lazio were even slightly allowed to settle, then it was never going to happen. Mm-hmm. They had to get at them from the first minute, and they just did it so well, right?
Yeah, 100%. The intensity was there, obviously matching the passion that was on the stands. But I think also to the last point around Pellegrini, I wonder if Ranieri deliberately tried to stoke it up and kind of get that kind of reaction from Pellegrini, because I think, as Andrea alluded to, he hasn't had the best of seasons. He doesn't look half the time bothered. And I wonder, ahead of this big game, whether he thought, do you know what, I will try and rile him up and kind of make out that I'm not going to play him and make him kind of like question whether he wants to be here. And I think you saw it across the team as well, Rory. Players that potentially haven't played as well this season or to their full potential, really coming out with a lot of determination and grit, And even during the kind of first 10-minute spell, I felt, they had a game plan. They knew what they were all going to do. They're well drilled, but they were all quite silky. They kept the ball. Possession was the most important thing. And Lazio didn't have time to settle, as you alluded to, but also couldn't get into a rhythm. They really couldn't string any moves together. And I think that really disrupted what Baroni tried to achieve with Lazio. And we only kind of saw bits of it in the second half, but nowhere near to the levels that we knew that Lazio could achieve. And I think a lot of credit goes to Ranieri, because I appreciate maybe we don't feel that he has maybe pushed Roma on to where we think Roma could be, right? But I do think, being that kind of cult hero that he is, he would have stoked that kind of feeling ahead of this game. And, you could see by the end of it, even though it got really feisty, it was a team that was fighting for their fans, and that's something that will give them the bragging rights at the end of the day. So, yeah, Roma have got a lot to be proud of. I think the key here is, can they follow it up? Can they follow it up in normal games where they're expected to win and bring that same intensity, Rory? I think that's the real question, because we saw a really good display. Now they have to follow it up. But I think with that confidence now going into the next game, they can definitely bring it, Rory.
Well, I think the consistency is exactly what you're right. There's definitely been an upturn in results since Ranieri came in, right? So they've only lost 1 in their last 5 in the league. Like, they've got 3 wins there. Like, there's clearly been an uptick and a bit of a kind of improvement. What I really liked when I was watching this game, and Andrea, I'll see what you think as well, was there was a few relationships within the team building. I feel like we saw Dovbyk and Dybala kind of bouncing off each other a little bit. Dovbyk winning the ball, laying it down for Dybala to continue the runs. Sailormakers, this form continues to improve and not even improve, just continues at a very good level. Like, I feel like Hummel's coming in the back line, like alongside Mancini and Indica, that bit of experience. He's not the quickest, but with a bit of experience there. And then our favourite man, Kone, alongside Paredes in midfield, who Paredes is not a nutter, by the way, but those two in midfield completely ran it. Like, it felt like we're starting to see the players and a bit of chemistry, a little bit of a kind of familiarity? Like, is this just time, or is this Ranieri again keeping it simple, getting it back to basics, but just making sure they each know what they're doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does go to Ranieri, to be fair. I think he did play around with it the first few weeks, a bit too wild with his selections, I thought. But I think it's kind of like very logical choices as well at the same time. As much as obviously he's a great manager, I think he's realised, the defence doesn't seem to have a leader. Hummels goes in. We don't seem to have that creativity behind Dovic. Dybala needs to play a bit more there, advanced. Certain positions, we know Dovic's got to be the main guy, so we've got to try and play best to how he plays. And Dovic is good at, laying the ball off, controlling, holding up. And I think he done really well in that game as well. And when you can utilise these players in their proper positions and their proper styles, they really are good players. Dovic, what he did with Girona, like he could do that at Roma at Serie A. He could definitely do it. So I think it's very clever from Ranieri. But I just think, again, it's just more how they kind of stretch this consistently. I think they've got the right players in the right positions, but the ones around them will also need to step up as well. So if they're going to be consistent and try and, push on this season. But I'm with Adam, that I still think those games, that's where the real questions we'll see when we see him play those lower teams and stuff. Will they have that same tenacity, pace? Because if they have that every week, they could beat a lot of teams in Serie A. So it's just whether the spirit of the game got to them and made them play like 100 times better than they really are, or there is some sort of truth to it and they can build on it. So that's the thing we're going to see in the coming weeks for sure.
Yeah, no, it was much improved, but I think you're right. Yeah, it's if you can't get yourself bigged up for a Rome derby, then you shouldn't really be in football, I would say. So there is a point of can you carry this into the next game. But let's talk about Lazio. Adam, 2 wins in the last 5 games. Things are kind of slowing down a little bit. Now, obviously, the first half we said they seemed completely shell shocked, weren't really able to string any passes together. But the second half, I think Roma managed it pretty well. Didn't really let Lazio really penetrate. They were able to just kind of, slow things down, try and catch them on the break. But for Lazio, there was just a bit of lack of imagination, a bit predictable. I think Svilar, he got given man of the match, but he didn't make any massive saves from what I can see, maybe 2 or 3 saves across the 90. I feel like Lazio didn't really test them enough. And Castellanos, obviously, he got sent off at the end. But for me, it seemed like he spent the entire second half trying to get sent off and more worried about winding up Svilar and Hummels and Mancini than actually trying to play the game, right? Do you think that this is Barone's first derby? He wasn't really sure how to manage it. Where do you think it went wrong?
I think they've been in a bit of a slump, it's fair to say, of late. I think that 6-0 defeat to Inter those many weeks ago seems to have taken a bit of the kind of intensity that they approached with certain games. Now, I thought Nuno Tavares was good in this particular match, but I think, like you say, there wasn't much movement. There wasn't many people trying to create space. And when they were in those kind of positions, there was no one really threatening. As you allude to, they have been struggling up top. And a lot has been kind of relied upon Castellanos to be that solitary person up top alongside Abdullah Diaye. And, to an extent, they have applied themselves. I think they were unlucky in the game against Atalanta, where Atalanta obviously equalised with the last few minutes of the game. But I do feel they've come to that point of the season where this was always my criticism of Lazio, is the depth, that they don't have necessarily a lot of players that they can chop and change. And I think maybe there is a sense of maybe tiredness within the squad. I think Ravella and Guendouzi, they've got a lot of stamina to the game, but they need others to really contribute. And I think potentially that's where you're seeing a bit of a lethargic kind of performance, especially from a defensive point of view. I could see the likes of Gila and Romagnoli being pulled apart at times. So I think there is an element of that. Obviously, Provedel has had a very hot and cold season, it's fair to say as well. I wouldn't necessarily blame him for the goals that were conceded, but again, it was just one of those where, from an outsider point of view, I think that's the most obvious kind of observations on this particular game, is that they did seem to come undone, really. And I suspect that's where maybe they're looking to reinforce that area. But at the same time, I don't hear many rumours. So I don't know where they go from here. But potentially there could be an element of Baroni. This is his first major big role, right, in Serie A as well. So first season he's done quite well up until this point, but this is a massive test of his credentials, and I think this will be something that he will kind of analyze and see where he went wrong. And I think definitely it's just down to a few elements, tiredness, as well as, like you say, creatively they weren't there for the match.
Yeah, I feel like his substitution times were odd. So he made 2 substitutions at half time where he brought on Dia and Chuana for the second half. Then he didn't make another substitution till the 80th minute when he brought on Lazzari, and then the 89th minute he brought on Pellegrini and Noslin. And it just feels like by that point it's too late. But also, I feel like at no point did he make a change in midfield. Now, there was only Basic on the bench who's actually a midfielder, but if you're trying to like stamp your authority on a game, maybe get that bit of an ignition in the midfield, someone who's going to find that, make that run, find that pass, then maybe having the opportunity to bring out Ravella or Guendouzi and bring someone else on. Maybe doing it a little bit earlier could have, because the whole game, I think I mentioned it in the WhatsApp group, I was like, Roma need one more, because I always felt like if Lazio got one, they would win it 3-2, right? I felt like Roma, if they were tested mentally, they might not stand up to it, but they just weren't able to find that spark. And I think maybe his timings of the substitutions and waiting so long just kind of hamstrung them a little bit. And again, that's what I mean. In his first Rome derby, maybe he just wasn't quite sure whether to stick or twist or how to deal with it. So, yeah, a big learning curve from him, but an absolutely huge win from Roma. They'll be absolutely delighted, and no matter how bad this season is, they'll be able to say they beat Lazio this season. I think that's all their fans really care about at the moment.
Yeah.
If they'd have had the derby loss as well as what this season has been, I dread to think what the scenes would have been down at Trigoria afterwards. So the players will be relieved as well. But a huge result for Roma, 2-0. Let's move on down to the relegation 6-pointer. Monza 1, Cagliari 2. Now, obviously, we talked about their managerial change at the beginning of the show, so we're not really going to talk about that. We are going to talk about the performance, though, and how concerned we are about Monza. And will Cagliari be okay? Is Davide Nicola going to perform a miracle again? Let's start with Monza. Andrea, is this the stupidest red card of the weekend, the D'Ambrosio red card? Because I think Castellanos was pretty stupid, but the D'Ambrosio one just seems so needless.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's a crucial time, at a point where they were still in the game. They could have gone on, maybe snatch a winner. It's just terrible for such an experienced player who's played it into, you've got, it was a poor moment to do it. And I don't think it cost them in the end, really, because I think Cagliari were on top of them completely. I even said personally, if they had an extra man, I still think they would have lost. Like they were that bad. So I think there wasn't really much complaints. But yeah, you can't put your team in that jeopardy in that position of the league to get the red card. It's terrible.
Yeah, I just thought it was so stupid. It was like, so if you've not seen it, the ball's gone out of play. The Cagliari player is lying on the ground. D'Ambrosio climbs over him, and as he climbs over him, just throws his foot into his side. Completely petulant, stupid. I just said, from an experienced player, just at that moment, I was like, okay, if Monza were ever going to get back into this, it's not happening now. And Cagliari were just fully on top from then, and it probably should have been more than 2. But Adam, we've talked about their attacking woes. They're really difficult to watch. Their only goal was from a penalty this weekend from Caprari. I thought Danny Motta had some moments until he went off. There's just not any creative spark or attacking life in this team. Even like when they took off Bondo in midfield as well, I was like, well, there goes your legs in midfield. Like, there's just no excitement in this team at the moment. Do they feel like, this is going to be quite damning, the Southampton have said, this year? It feels quite bad.
I was going to say maybe the Kiev Verona of this. It is, as I alluded to when we talked about Nesta, is the lack of quality, really. That is the fundamentals behind Monza this season. And obviously they got rid of Calpani as well to Fiorentina, which was a huge kind of attacking influence. They had Colombo on loan as well last season. So again, although he might not have necessarily scored a lot of goals, he had a lot of goal involvement as well. And I think that's the key. We were joking about the contributions of Milan Djuric before the end of the year, last pod. And I think the real issue is that you need to substantially improve that squad across all areas. It's not just one position that needs like addressing, it's multiple areas, Like I say, defensively, it looks like Pablo Mari might go. So again, not only are you filling in for Mari, but you're also filling in for whatever formation, because I don't think they've got the personnel. You look at midfield, again, there's been a lot of gaps before the start of this season. They're going to have to strengthen it even further. And up top, you just don't see a kind of positive sign or positive outlook. I don't know about you guys, but I don't actually know what style of football that Monza play. Is it direct football? Is it, trying to build up the play? Is it trying to, pull defenders and create space? I don't really get the Monza side. And that was even when Nesta was there, he was trying all sorts of different things and it just wasn't kind of working. And I think that's probably the fundamentals is there is no kind of identity with this Monza side. You don't know what you're getting, even with the personnel. Like sometimes when you bring off players, like you said with the Lazio scenario, you are changing up the philosophy, right? But you don't get a sense of that with Monza. And I'm just looking at the next few games, Rory, and I do worry for them because obviously they've got next Fiorentina, who haven't been in great form themselves, but I think they'll probably see this as a positive game to go into and potentially get a win. And then followed by Bologna away, Genoa away, and then they're at home for another 6-pointer, Rory, Hellas Verona at home. And I'd probably say I think I fancy Hellas Verona to win that one based on the form of both sides. And it doesn't get any easier thereafter, away to Lazio, at home to Lecce, and then away to Roma. It's not looking positive. I just don't know if I kind of look at that and go, they're going to pick up more than 6 points. I can't see it personally. I just think that's me being optimistic, by the way. I'm not even saying 6 points is achievable. I think they will lose that. So I do worry for Monza, and I think they're probably gone now.
Yeah, I think they're not long for Serie A, but Andrea, I'm going to get you to talk about Cagliari because I think there's one player in particular that's getting quite a lot of headlines at Cagliari this year, and this is, of course, Zortea. Again, another goal for him. Beauty of a goal as well. Possible shouts for the Azzurri for him. Quite exciting, right?
100%. I think he's got a great shout to be in that squad. I mean, of course, he played with a 5-back, 3 at the back, so he would fit in quite nicely on that right-hand side. So, I think it would be I think he's got a great shout, and he's contributed a lot of goal contributions as well, which is been really crucial to Cagliari's points this season. To be fair, so that's something that's going to really stand out for them. So yeah, I think it's a great shout. I'd be interested to see if he does get called out. I feel like he deserves it. Spalletti said he'd call people on their performances, so I can't see why not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that whole right side of Cagliari, like with Zortea and Zappa behind him, has been a really big strong point for them so far. And of course, Adam, your favourite, Piccoli gets another goal. Only 23 years of age. I'm just trying to check how many goals that is from now this season. That is his 5th goal in Serie A this year. I doubted him a lot. I still continue to doubt him, but you're still beating the drum for him. Another goal for him. It was a great performance, and he is still clocking him up, right?
I did say that a jest, but let me beat the drum for him. I think, considering the kind of abundance of Italian strikers there are in Serie A, there's not many. There's only one that I would classify as probably really at that level, and that's Moise Kean, who's doing phenomenal stuff at Fiorentina. Outside of that, though, there's potential for him to force himself into that squad if he can work on that consistency. You did pull up that stats, Rory, where big chances he seems to miss a lot. But I think he's got a safe haven in Calgary. He can afford to do that. But equally, this is probably a good environment for him to kind of develop his game, And if he can take those chances like he did against Monza and be a bit more consistent, then I'm not saying it will definitely happen, but I think there's a potential that given, the likes of Daniele Maldini was called up, there's no harm for him to be called up. I don't think he'd be any worse than the Azzurri have ever called up into their squad. Let's put it this way. He's probably ahead of Simone Zaza personally for me.
That is the exact name that came into my head. Honestly.
Me too.
So I'm sure we're on the same wavelength when we're talking about him. But does he do it? I don't think he will. But look, talking about a young Italian that potentially could, if he gets that consistency, could maybe potentially force himself into the reckoning. I doubt it, but you never know.
It's an absolutely massive win for Cagliari. It does put them level on Lecce with 17 points in just one place out of the relegation zone. It's still super tight down there. 13th to 18th, all separated by 3 points. Andrea, just how massive a win is this for Cagliari? It feels like these are the games they need to be picking up points. This is Davide Nicola's bread and butter, right?
Absolutely massive. It's an away game as well, so away games at this level is like a bonus as well. So, and even though it's Monza, it's still an away game, and it puts a team like that lower behind them, further behind them, which is good in their sake as well. But I know it's technically that they're out of the relegation zone, but it does have a little bit of psychological help that you kind of see yourself outside of it. And there's not much difference, to be fair, between, I think, like 13th, I think it is, 14th and below. So, yeah, there's a lot of points obviously to play for, but the manager's been there, done that. We know that he's done wonders. So these type of results are gonna, push him forward. But yeah, they've got the players. They've got real good players that are contributing all over the pitch, scoring goals. So I think they really have a good chance of staying up.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So, and for some reason, I counted Empoli out of it, but 12th down to 18th are separated by 3 points. And even Torino are only on 21 points. So that's 4 points away. So, yeah, a lot of teams down there, always tight as ever. Love to see it. But, yeah, Cagliari, huge win for them. Davide Nicola marches on, and he has an opportunity to get the headlines this weekend as they'll be facing Milan away. Imagine Conceição beats Juve in Inter and loses to Cagliari. Only Davide Nicola could do it. We will see. But the next game we're going to look at before we do our kind of roundup, I think there's Coppa Italia this week. I'm going to double check that. But Andrea, sorry, mate. Fiorentina 0, Napoli 3. Let's talk about Fiorentina. I'm getting the feeling that they're quite a streaky team. It needs to be like once you win one game, you don't turn it around quite quickly. Like, how does it feel at Fiorentina at the moment?
I mean, on the eye, to be fair, it does seem like that. I think it's the last season as well was like that as well. I just think it's showing the lack of depth. I think Adam was saying about Lazio. It's the exact same thing with Fiorentina. I think the lack of quality in depth in certain positions, especially the midfield and out wide. I feel like the midfield aren't giving enough protection to the defence, and then I feel like in that game they were so exposed that it seemed like Napoli. There was 4 Napoli players in midfield, no Fiorentina midfield in that midfield. It was just easy overrun that midfield, and when you're getting attacked that badly, you're only your confidence as a defence is going to drop, and you saw so many mistakes and stuff. So I think that's a big concern, and that's only because obviously Cataldi didn't play, but that's still, even when he's played, he's made some mistakes as well. So there's a big issue there that they're going to have to look at in terms of midfield, trying to shore that up and bring that energy back, because they've lost that energy. Unfortunately, with the Bova situation, as sad as it is, it's also a position that he was such a key player for Fiorentina in terms of bringing that energy, winning the ball back. So they've got to kind of look at these type of replacements for now. And then, of course, out wide, at the end of the day, you look at players like Sotil, who for me is literally all action, no bite, like all running, all. It looks good, but then you get to the final third and it's nothing. Or scoring now, won the goal now and then it calms down. But the reality is, it's been 3-4 years of this with him. Unfortunately, he's just not. He's probably best as a super sub, but not a starter. And then you've got players like Ikone, Kwame coming on, but they're not players. They're not going to win you games. They're not going to, you can't. And I said this last season, and these are the same players coming on again this season. So it's a bit concerning that it hasn't been addressed, and it's something that needs to be addressed in January, because last year, similar time, to be fair, Lazio in a similar position as well. last year Fiorentina were fourth, and they just had that opportunity. If they got a few transfers in, that it could have made a difference. And I think this is the same situation. If they don't, I could see this happening more and more often this season. So there's a lot of concerns they've got to address. Otherwise, we're going to see more streaky results, like you say.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Bove situation, because obviously it's quite difficult to know what's happening there, but it's so clear that they're missing him or you're missing him in midfield, right? And it's like, do you go out and buy and sign a replacement, or do you wait and see if he comes back? Like, it's just a bit of kind of stuck in no man's land, I suppose. But Adam, for Napoli, now back in form, flying 3 goals, Scott McTominay again. That defeat feels a long time ago. Is this Napoli back on their strides? They're back on top, 3 points clear, obviously into 2 games in hand, but it's all pretty good for Conte, right?
Yeah, and Aurelio De Laurentiis, he won't have to spend any money in this window, will he? So he's all happy. No, in all honesty, it was a very clinical performance from Napoli. I think due to the shortcomings of Fiorentina, they took advantage. They had the quality at the end of the day, should I say? And look, I think this was the typical kind of Conte performance. You know, he likes these kind of games where it's straightforward for them. I think that's what he's been craving for during the whole campaign. I think the problem is just the consistency with this group of players. But look, I think it wouldn't surprise me that we still see some movement from Napoli. And yeah, it's just a question of who's going to go where. So for now, it's just one of those waiting games. But yeah, they took advantage of the situation, which could have been easy for them to have faltered as well. You know, could have choked on this whole situation, but they didn't. And look, puts the pressure on the other teams now, you know, to up their game. So yeah, Conte will be very happy with this, Rory.
I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, David Neres starts and scores another banger in another incredible performance from him. It was interesting seeing Spinazzola out on the left wing as an attacker, kind of due to necessity with Cavada still being out and stuff. So there's a little bit of flexibility in that team from Conte. I was really surprised to see Anguissa is now in the last 6 months of his contract. I was surprised to see that. Napoli haven't tried to tie him down, because I thought it was another great performance from him. A lot of lung-busting runs. I know I always go on about him and I'm always watching him, but I thought he was really good again. But Neres, it just continues to that. I was so doubtful of that signing when he came in, because his numbers just did not look good. And that's why, geeks, the numbers don't matter. It's all about the eye test, right? It's all about the eye test. And this guy's just so exciting. Been unbelievable since he came in from Napoli. So, yeah, great to see him get another beautiful goal. And Andrea, Scott McTominay, another goal scorer. I was talking to my Napoli supporting friend this Christmas. They absolutely adore him. He does just seem to run this midfield when he chooses to, right?
Yeah, and I think in particular as well, he's always at the right place at the right time in terms of running late in the box and scoring goals. I think he took his goal really well, pressed on a mistake, saw it happening firsthand, and finished it really well, confidently as well. So it wasn't an easy finish first time, to be fair. So it was a good finish. But yeah, I just think he looks really confident on the ball. He seems very quite elegant on the ball as well. Very he's added a bit more to his game since his Man United days as well. So I just think Napoli have given him that freedom of expression a bit in that midfield to kind of be that guy to kind of go to, but also to contribute with goals going up the pitch as well. So yeah, he's been a terrific signing, and I just see it getting more and more like that this season and so on. He looks really good.
Yeah, another fantastic performance from him. Another great 3 points for Napoli. I would just say this run of form is in 3 games that maybe you would expect them to win. So they've obviously lost to Lazio, but they beat Udinese, beat Genoa, beat Venezia, and beat Fiorentina. They've now got Verona at home next before they go to Atalanta away, Juventus at home, and Roma away. So maybe 3 games there that might be a little bit trickier and a bit more of a test for Napoli. But you've got to win the teams that you expect. You've got to beat the teams you're expected to win against, right? And that's all that Conte will care about. Guys, there is actually no midweek action this week. The Italians are having a week off. So we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the upcoming fixtures for next weekend. And we're back. It's the final part of the show, listener. Time flies when you're having fun. It's gone so quickly, and it is time to look ahead to next weekend's fixtures. Adam, what are the games we should be getting excited about this weekend?
Yes, so this is game week 20, and we'll start off on Friday evening where Lazio can put the rights from that Roma defeat by hosting Como and beating them. We'll see what happens in that particular game. That takes place at 7:45 p.m. UK time. We then move into Saturday's game starting at 2 p.m. Empoli host Lecce in a big 6-pointer potentially there. Udinese also take on Atalanta at the same time. We then move into 5 p.m. for the classic Turin derby that we know Juventus always win. So no hopes for Torino there. But then at 7:45, we've got Milan at home to Calgary. We then move into Sunday's fixtures starting at 11:30 a.m. and we'll start with Genoa at home to Parma in what could be a very big game for both clubs. Then at 2 p.m. we've got Venezia at home to Inter before at 5 p.m. we have Bologna hosting Roma, and then the big game on Sunday at 7:45 Napoli at home to Hellas Verona. Before on Monday night we've got our famous Fiorentina taking on Monza. That is at Monza's grounds at 7:45. So that is your game week 20, Rory.
Big weekend ahead, guys, but we've just got a little bit of time for one transfer story that has caught our eye maybe this week. Listener, you'll be very happy to hear that I have called the Beto loan deal, and it looks like it's going to happen in the least surprising move ever. He's been linked with Torino, which I think would actually be quite a good move for all parties involved. The Everton fans would quite happily carry him to Turin themselves. They need a striker, and I think him being back in Serie A, maybe he could find a bit of form. Adam, a transfer deal that you're maybe excited about?
I don't want to steal a thunder from potentially Andrea here, but the one that really did get me excited was the potential of Chiesa returning back to Fiorentina on a potential loan to / permanent move. So I think if that could happen, Rory, that would be amazing, personally.
It would be great to see him have his homecoming. I kind of feel like he might want to stick out at Liverpool, but maybe there's a move in the line there. Andrea, a story that you're looking forward to?
The other one I thought of as well was Fazzini looked like it was done for Lazio, but apparently Napoli have had a word. Had a word, and maybe might swoop in for him, which would be a steal, really. Because Lazio looked like it was all done, but yeah, Napoli aren't going to let it go. So that it's interesting to see which team he goes to in the end. If whoever pays extra, or is it like a personal choice on his half? So just have to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, a player we've been excited about for a while on this pod, Fazzini. It would be great to see him get a move, even though I think he'll get a bit more game time at Empoli. I would quite like him to move and loan back for the rest of the season. Maybe could be a good one, but yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where he goes. Guys, we will keep you up to date with all of the transfer business when we can. And thank you for joining us. We hope you had a great Christmas, New Year. We're delighted that you are back. Adam, anything to say before I send the listener home?
Yes, if you happen to be of the Apple variant when you're listening to our podcast, please do us a favour. It's very quick. You don't have to do too much, but please just give us a review. That's all we ask. Just some balance in terms of commentary. That's all we crave for. We've only got 3 ratings on there, which currently puts us on 3.7 out of a potential 5. But we don't feel the comments are really representative of what we actually do on this podcast. So we'd appreciate it, especially for Andrea's benefit, given that he's always on here as well. And it doesn't really seem fair on him. So yeah, with that, I'll leave it to the listener to do their thing.
Perfect. We thank you in advance, Apple listener. We will see you next week, guys. Head over and find our Premier League episode as well. I'm going to try very hard not to complain about referees too much. You can see how well I do. You can find us on all the social medias at Anglo-Italian Pod, except on X, we're at Italian Anglo Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down here somewhere. Give us a rating, give us a view, give us a follow on your podcast app of choice. And we'll see you next time. Ciao, a dopo.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.